Let's go now to Akiva Eldar. He's a political analyst and author of Lords of the Land, the War over Israel's settlements in the occupied territories. He joins us from Tel Aviv. I want to pick up on what Mo was saying about the reaction to Israelis not feeling safe, perhaps in a way that they did before all these wars, in just a moment. First of all, let's just hone in on this very significant drone attack on Netanyahu's home, one of his homes in Caesarea, this city in the north. Extraordinary pictures there of it actually overtaking an Israeli helicopter flying undetected, making it some 70 kilometers, I believe, into Israel. To what extent does this change things for Netanyahu, making it personal, the fact that this was directed at one of his houses?
Well, what Netanyahu has just put on his social media is that nothing will deter me from defending Israel. And of course, this was an opportunity to remind us the success of the Israeli army and his own total victory to get rid of leaders of terrorism such as Nasrallah and Mohammed Def and Sinwar. And their reaction to what's happening today is reflected, Laura, by, I can show the viewers, this is the Likud logo, and they are inviting the members of the Likud to join a big event near the Gaza Strip to launch a project of settling in Gaza. And among the speakers is a member of the Israeli cabinet and 9 members of Knesset from the Likud. So this is the message that we are getting from the leadership. Whether Netanyahu is behind it or not, we can't know. But if since a member of the cabinet, a member of the Likud is involved, I believe that Netanyahu didn't make efforts to stop those people. Yeah. But no question, Laura, I think that this event should be added to the terms of reference and to the questions that will be put forward to the investigation committee that Netanyahu refuses to form.
This event, Akiva, do we know when it's happening?
I think that Netanyahu will do everything to avoid this. And if it happens, it will be a committee that will be, the members of the committee will be picked up by him. And I think that, the Israeli public is asking what Netanyahu is going to do to provide them with more security. If he cannot make sure that the IDF will cover his own residence, what about my apartment, my residence in Tel Aviv?
That was exactly going to be my next point, Akiva, because the whole premise for Netanyahu of Israel going to war in Gaza, going to war with Hezbollah, firing against Iran, is to make Israel safer. And as Mohammed was saying, we're now seeing daily dozens of rockets targeting the north of Israel, some even drones reaching Tel Aviv. Are people still broadly supporting Netanyahu in his hawkish aims in the region, or are they increasingly questioning what he is doing?
Yeah, I think that after the few days of euphoria, that people were very excited about watching the body of Sinwar, and some Israeli networks were very graphic about it. And I'm happy that my grandchildren were not watching the footage. But more and more people are asking, first of all, what about the captives? Every Saturday, there are hundreds of demonstrations around the country. And the military establishment, as well as the Minister of Defense, are saying that this is the best opportunity we had to bring them home. And this is the other question that people are asking. in addition to the question, when will we be able to leave home or to let our children leave home without worrying about the next siren? When will my neighbors that actually live in the north in Kiryat Shmona will be able to go back home and leave the hotels in Tel Aviv, 60,000 people? Unfortunately, they can't watch Al Jazeera. So they don't really know if they are at all interested in the suffering in Beirut and in Gaza. The Israeli media is still busy with October 7th, and they are not ready to move to October 8th and not to October 2024.
Akiva Eldar joining us there from Tel Aviv. Many thanks indeed for taking the time to speak to us here on Al Jazeera. Let's take you back now to Beirut. Again, these are live pictures of the skyline of the capital city of Lebanon there. We know there have now been at least 10 Israeli airstrikes on the southern suburb of this city. And as we've been discussing, these have been coming hours after hundreds of rockets were fired into Israel from Lebanon by Hezbollah. And let's get the very latest now with Dorsa Jabbari. She's live for us in Beirut. Dorsa, just wrap up the last couple of hours for us with these strikes that are continuously almost hitting the southern suburb of Beirut.
Yes, Laura, this has been one of the heaviest bombardments that we've seen in recent weeks. Earlier, around 13 GMT, Israeli military issued forced evacuation threats for a number of neighborhoods in the southern suburb of Beirut. And shortly after those warnings were issued, we saw multiple airstrikes in multiple neighborhoods. These are neighborhoods that we've seen that have come under attack before. The main one being Harat Horek area in the suburb of Beirut, as well as Borj al-Barajne. Now, this is an area in Beirut that is close to the airport. We've seen footage on social media from people at the airport that can see the direct hits very near them. This recent barrage of airstrikes by Israel is one of the heaviest we've seen in recent weeks. Last Wednesday, we saw an attack carried out in Harat Horek neighborhood. That was about 2 or 3 airstrikes, but today, at least 10 so far, and they appear to be continuing. What Israel says they are targeting is Hezbollah infrastructure and personnel. But of course, this is a once densely populated area, home to about 700,000 people. It is now a ghost town. Many people have fled over the past month since Israel began its heavy air bombardment of the southern suburb and the surrounding areas.
And this is coming, Dorsa, just after Hezbollah says that the conflict was entering a new phase. What do we know about that?
Well, according to statements issued by Deputy Secretary General Naim Qassem, as well as the media relations person of the organization, they said that they are ready to continue fighting and that they will escalate the conflict because there has been no ceasefire. They said they are ready for a ceasefire, but if one is not reached, they will continue to fight and they will escalate. And what we've seen over the past few weeks, over the past at least week or so, is a increase in Hezbollah attacks on northern Israel and major installations in Israel. We saw one of the deadliest drone strikes carried out in Benyamina with at least 4 Israeli soldiers were killed. And the latest attacks we've seen today, one of the heaviest that Hezbollah has carried out, clearly delivering a message to the leadership in Israel that despite the hits that they've taken continuously over the past month or so, their organization is not crumbling and they're very much still able to fight.
Dorsa Jabbari bringing us the latest there from Beirut as the sun sets. It's now darkness there in Beirut, or parts of Beirut, as the city continues to be pounded by Israeli strikes. One of the heaviest bombardments, Dorsa was saying, in recent weeks, especially a number of neighborhoods in the southern areas. These are the southern suburb, which has got plenty of Hezbollah, or did have plenty of Hezbollah targets. Of course, Israel has been pounding Lebanon and southern Lebanon for nearly a month now. We're going to be keeping a close eye on the situation there in Beirut as we're seeing heavy bombardment in the southern suburb once again. Let's now go to Tehran to get the view there on all of this. And we've got Tohid Asadi. He's a writer and specialist in Iranian affairs, and he joins us now from Iran's capital. So I'm interested to know, Tohid, what the mood is there. What are people saying? What's the media saying as we continue to see this escalation in Lebanon and increasing number of hits on northern Israel?
Well, actually, the daily life continues without any specific major disruption, but that doesn't mean that people are indifferent. I think both people and the Iranian officials are closely following the recent developments in Lebanon and in Gaza, and they are afraid of the possibility of an extension of the battlefield, knowing the fact that the Iranian people and Iranian officials are not interested in full-fledged all-out war scenario. For that reason, we saw Iranian foreign minister paying visits to different regional countries in order to de-escalate the situation and send out the message that Iran is not looking for war, but at the same time there is this preparedness from Tehran in case the situation gets worse. And when it comes to the public, we see the same tone. People are not happy with what takes place in Lebanon and Gaza, and we saw different gatherings in the past weeks across the country. People are supporting the Palestinian cause, and they have different demonstrations on that purpose. This is the entire vibe inside Tehran and inside other cities of the country.
And Tohid, just before we talk a bit more about Iran, I just want to bring viewers' attentions to the live pictures that we're now seeing. Now, this is a shot, again, as the sun goes down over Lebanon, of the south of the country. This is a village called Shab. Now, this is in the south of Lebanon. It's 1 kilometre northeast of the Israeli border. And as we can see, there are huge trails of smoke hovering over the horizon, over the skyline there. This is the 5th time we believe that this village in southern Lebanon has been hit. There we can see a helicopter in the sky heading towards that village, those areas that have been targeted. Heavy plumes of black smoke there over this village in southern Lebanon, just north of the border with Israel. We don't know how many people, if any, are still in those villages because they were all called to be evacuated. But we do know, of course, that there are still Hezbollah locations in there. We know that the Israelis are fighting in there. And we know as well that there are UNIFIL positions still in southern Lebanon. That is the scene there in the south of the country at the moment. Just in the hours, after the southern suburb of Beirut saw numerous hits as well in the capital city. Let's go back to Tohid Asadi. Of course, Iran has been on standby now for a potential Israeli attack for almost a month since it fired multiple missiles at Israel. How are you seeing preparations being made for that attack, which may well be imminent as tensions keep escalating?
Well, actually, I think now there is this profound understanding, both among the Iranian officials and the Iranian public, that this insatiable desire to expand the battlefield is not going to stop by Israelis. And there is now this tendency to bring as many players as possible into this already deteriorated battlefield. For that, Iranians are waiting for any possible scenario, and there is this long and wide spectrum of, let's say, scenarios on the table for Iranian side. And what we hear from Tehran is a two-sided statement saying that while we're not looking for war, but at the same time, when you come to military officials and when you come to the diplomatic officials, what we hear from Tehran is that the country is trying to send a very clear message that it's going to respond decisively. When it comes to the nature of this response, it remains to be seen how the future could unfurl. But what could be taken for granted at the time being is that Iran has this full preparedness for any possible scenario down the road, including an all-out, full-fledged war.
Okay, Tohid Asadi bringing us the view there from Tehran. Many thanks, Tohid. Well, let's now bring in Al Jazeera's senior political analyst, Marwan Bishara. He joins us from London. And Marwan, we're clearly seeing Israel's immediate response to those rocket and drone attacks on the north of Israel earlier today. What is your sense here? Are you sensing that this is the extent of the response, or is this just the beginning of something bigger?
Well, certainly we are at the beginning of something bigger, there's no doubt, because the threat of attacking Iran remains imminent. The expansion of the war with Hezbollah is a fact of life every day. And the attack on Netanyahu's private residence in Caesarea, as you mentioned earlier, I think that was a qualitative escalation that certainly brings to mind the idea of establishing some form of a balance of terror with Israel. As you try to assassinate our leaders, we try to assassinate yours. So I think there's something here that probably should be shaking the Israeli establishment to the core and should be accelerating the already existing escalation towards wider conflict.
Of course, the whole premise of Israel going to war in Gaza and Lebanon is to make the country safer. It is, in reality, though, doing the exact opposite, isn't it?
It is. And that's why I thought, and I've been thinking about this since yesterday, those idiots who continue to think that simply by Israel killing Sinwar, everything is going to be dandy in the Middle East is mind-boggling. That once Sinwar is killed and once Nasrallah is killed, then that's it. You know, the gates for peace and prosperity will open, wide open for Israel and apparently for the Arabs in the region. And when that is parroted nonstop by main media outlets and by major Western leaders, you have to think, are they stupid or do they think the rest of the people around the world are stupid? Because we know for a fact, and we've been witnessing that the past 24 hours, 48 hours, that things continue to worsen. And Israel continues to insist that war has not ended. If anything, this is just a new stage of the war. And that Israel's appetite for violence and war seems to increase with violence and war. The more it assassinates, the more it kills, the more it bombs, the wider it wants to bomb and kill and assassinates. And I think it's getting its response, there is no doubt, from Hezbollah, Hamas, and others who say, well, look, if you're going to escalate and if you want to retaliate, we're going to retaliate back. So that certainly creates the dynamic for something serious. So instead of people simply projecting their ahistorical, their superficial view of this, some people need to, especially the grown-ups, as it were, the world powers, need to step in and take some more serious action instead of their wishful thinking.
What action do you think can be taken?
Well, the first that came to mind, of course, is something that we've heard from the French president that, God knows, it seems like he's already perhaps, eating his words. But clearly there's the idea that you have to stop the arms trade. You have to stop arming these people who are fighting, and notably Israel, because it's the one that accused of genocide. It's the one whose leaders are sought by the International Criminal Court's prosecutor for weaponizing hunger and in effect, carrying genocide in Gaza, and now widening the war towards Gaza, Syria, and Iran. So there's that. But there's also, of course, the other side of the story, and I'm not by any means trying to create some kind of a symmetry here. Clearly, Lebanon is being bombarded, Gaza is being annihilated, the West Bank is being bruised each and every day, and something got to give. Those who have leverage with Israel need to use it. If they don't use it, and they're simply going to project on us their wishful, dreamlike, stupid scenarios, I must say stupid, and I use the word stupid not, as a criticism per se. It's just that the idea is that either they are terribly irresponsible or terribly ignorant of the history of the Middle East. The fact that you have a prime minister in Israel that repeats after once an American president or a Turkish or an Arab or whoever, men of history that thought they would transform the Middle East. And from this little whole country called Israel, there's a prime minister who thinks now that he can kill a whole bunch of people in Gaza, that he's going to transform, a region of 700-800 million people just because he has American weapons. And they are kind of blessing him, and they're supporting him, and they're continuously shielding him and saying, okay, kill some more, and maybe there will be better chances for peace. You don't have better chances for peace by killing more Palestinians and more Lebanese and more Syrians and so on and so forth.
Okay, Marwan Bishara, many thanks indeed for joining us there with your analysis. Let's turn now to the situation on the ground in Gaza. The Israeli military is targeting heavily populated refugee camps in the north and in the centre of the Strip. Airstrikes have killed at least 46 Palestinians since dawn on Saturday. This is the Jabbari refugee camp in the north that's been under Israeli siege for more than 15 days. At least 450 Palestinians have been killed there since Israel launched its ground offensive. There are only 3 hospitals in northern Gaza where around 400,000 Palestinians remain trapped under near constant attack. Gaza's health ministry says the occupancy rate in these facilities has reached 190%. Kamal Adwan Hospital is still treating patients, but doctors say the situation inside has reached a catastrophic level. Al-Orda Hospital is currently under siege by the Israeli army, resulting in the complete blockade of access to and from the facility. And the Indonesian hospital is completely out of service. Its director says the Israeli military has besieged the complex and is targeting anyone moving in its vicinity. Hind Khoudary is in Deir Al Balah in central Gaza. And Hind, we heard from a senior Hamas official just a little earlier at the beginning of this hour, decrying the situation there in the north, saying no aid has got in the past 15 days, that Israel continues to target medics and hospitals, and there are no safe areas in Gaza and no safe passage from the north to outside to any other areas of Gaza. What are you hearing from people who are trapped in there?
Well, we are hearing that people have not been having any food, any medicine, and not only that, the fact that the fighting continues, the Israeli airstrikes, the Israeli shelling, and not only that, the Israeli forces are invading Jabbari, the Jabbari's refugee camp with their tanks, and not only that, the soldiers are kicking out Palestinians from their houses, and we have been seeing footage of also tanks proceeding very close to UN shelters, asking for the Palestinians to go out of the schools, asking them to evacuate and forcing them to leave those areas. Not only that, according to eyewitnesses, they're saying that also the Israeli soldiers are also arresting Palestinian men and interrogating them and separating them from their families. We have been also seeing footage for people on the move being forced to evacuate. But at the end of the day, those Palestinians are being shot at, are being evacuating, and all of this without zero stock of food. They do not even have drinking water. If someone has been injured, there's no ambulances to rescue them. And this has been happening there for the past 15 days. We're not talking about a week, but we're also entering the second week. So even if a family has a stock of food, now the food is finished. They do not have any source of food, no water, and not only that, continuous Israeli shelling and also airstrikes, and not only that, also the fact that Israeli soldiers are going into houses, invading houses, and forcing Palestinians to leave. This is another miserable situation Palestinians in the northern part of Jabbari are going through. Eyewitnesses are saying that the situation is very hard, and the airstrikes did not stop, and they are leaving right now on their feet from Jabbari and the northern Gaza Strip to the western parts of the Gaza city.
And Hind, this is 3 days after Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar was killed in southern Gaza. Do we yet have any idea of who will next lead the group?
Well, we definitely do not know. There are a couple of options. There's Al-Hayya, there's Mish'al, but at the end of the day, Palestinians here have been struggling a year of this war. All they care about is a ceasefire. All they care about is someone that's going to lead the negotiations. Here, Palestinians are drained, are very, very exhausted of the ongoing and everything that's going on the ground. We're talking to families here who have families stuck in Jabalia. They're saying that they're unable to reach their families for 15 days now. They do not know if their family's alive, if they're stuck under the rubble, if they're injured. There's no way of communicating them, and that's why Palestinians, all they care about right now in this situation is ending this war and also going back to their homes, going back to the north. And this is what Palestinians care about right now. Despite the fact who this person's going to be, despite the fact who's going to take control, Palestinians do not really care. All they care right now is bringing someone to end this war as soon as possible.
OK. Hind Khoudary brings the very latest there from Gaza, from central Gaza. Many thanks, Hind.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.